I'm starting off with my soy chunks. I got these from Western Beef. They're like the consistency of croutons, but once you hydrate them with water for about 20 minutes, they become tender like ground chicken. So right here, I'm just pouring 5 cups of water into my soy chunks. And like I said before, I'm just going to let this sit for 20 minutes. To season, I'll be starting off with 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of fresh garlic, a half a teaspoon of cumin, paprika, allspice, ground coriander, cayenne, and thyme. And to taste, I'll be using a half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper. In my pot, I put 1 cup of water and about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use any oil, but I chose olive oil. And then I'm going to get my vegetables in there. And then we're going to get all our seasoning in there. And you want to have your heat on about medium. I forgot to mention to my seasoning, I added 1 tablespoon of ketchup, 1 packet of sazon, and 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. Give it a nice little stir. And then we're going to go ahead and put our nice tender soy chunks in there. I really love these soy chunks because they are the consistency of ground meat. They have darker ones that resemble the beef, but I like these for chicken personally because they taste really reminiscent of what actual ground chicken tastes like. Like, look at that. Looks just like chicken. Onto our mock ground beef. So I'm going to start off with a half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, 1 tablespoon of onion powder. I have parsley, cilantro, and Italian seasoning, all 1 teaspoon of those. 1 teaspoon of adobo, 1/4 of a teaspoon of cayenne, 1/4 of a teaspoon of paprika, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of allspice. Then I have 1 tablespoon of onion powder and 1 tablespoon of garlic powder. We have our Gardein mock ground beef, a half a cup of peppers, 1/4 of a cup of onions. In the pot, I'm using 1/4 of a cup of water, a half a teaspoon of oil. Put all our vegetables in there, and we're gonna swish this around. That way everything's even. Then we're gonna dump all our seasoning in there. In my seasoning, I also added 1 tablespoon of ketchup and 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. And then we're gonna dump our ground beef in there. These do not take a long time to cook at all, so we're just gonna go ahead and stir that in there for about 4 or 5 minutes, and look at that. Looks just like ground beef. Look at that color and that texture. Now we're gonna take our ground beef and put a little bit in our empanada skin. These skins are from Goya. You can get them from any local grocery store. They come in packs of 10. They just say empanadas on them. So, and they're totally vegan. So you're just gonna kind of try to get everything in there, a little of the peppers, a little of the onions, and then once you've got your desired amount in your skin, then you're gonna go ahead and flip that over. You don't want to stuff them too much because you don't want them to burst in the oil. So just make sure you put, a good amount. Then you're going to take your fork and press them closed. This ensures that they stay closed, but sometimes they might open a little bit, like have air pockets in them. So during this part, just try to press really tight so that they don't open in the oil. You're going to do the same thing with your chicken. Depending on whatever stuffing you're using or the size of the actual stuffing that you're using, like the chicken's a little bigger than the ground beef, you want to put a little less chicken in there just because of the size. Like I said, you really don't want the empanada to burst inside of the oil when you're frying them. It'll create a big mess and you're going to have to throw away that oil and get new oil. So just be mindful of that. You want to use probably like a tablespoon of ingredients. I know it might seem like a little bit, but once you fry them and you're eating them, it'll be sufficient enough. Now for the guava and cream cheese. So I just put a little bit of vegan cream cheese in there. I like the Kite Hill brand better than this brand that I'm using, but this brand works just as good. You want to make sure that you melt your guava overnight. You can use any kind of guava paste or frozen guava. I use frozen. The paste works a little bit better because it's not as runny. So you want to make sure you're putting a little bit of the paste in there, because you don't want it to explode or to open while it's in the pot. These are a little tricky, so that's why I use a different technique when I'm closing them. That way it doesn't spill out. You see how a little bit is spilling out on the ends? They're really messy. So that's why sometimes it's better to use the paste, but you can use whatever you choose. I like this because it doesn't have as much sugar in it. It's just guava. And you can also add a little brown sugar to make it a little sweeter if you need it to be a little sweeter. But you control how sweet you want it. Okay, now for our oil. You're literally gonna make sure the oil is like piping hot. You're gonna throw a little bit of the dough inside of the oil to make sure it's set. These literally take 30 seconds on each side. You don't want to leave them in too long. It's not something that you go to the bathroom or go have a conversation while they're in the oil. You want to just stand right by your oil and make sure they don't burn. You're going to flip until they're golden brown on each side, like that. And then you're going to set a paper towel to put them on to soak up the excess oil. And there you have it, your empanadas. They're nice and golden brown. Tastes so good.
So talented, blessed. Unique. You see, beautiful. Sir, please leave me alone.
This is the white orange cheese one.
Oh!
It's so good. I feel like you have to eat these hot though, because it just tastes like the first bite is so good. Now let me see this one.
Terrific. How do you do?
Trapeze.
Trapeze? Okay. No, you want to let it put some face. I'm counting on it. This is so good.
Oh my god.
Perfect. I don't need to say not to say, but between you and me, 750
I don't even know which one's my favorite. You want to try one now?
Yeah, we're gonna change that name.
It's so good. It's really good. You want to try one or you want to try? There's guava and cheese, chicken, and beef. Chicken? So good, right? So good. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.